Our next event is happening in Singapore between the 27th and 28th of February. Now, Founders Longevity Forum Singapore is going to be a unique event brought to you by Founders Forum, the Academy for Healthy Longevity at the National University of Singapore, and of course, Longevity.Technology. Now, this event brings together global leaders from longevity, both clinical, academic, and investors, to build knowledge around what's happening in the longevity sector and to drive growth, not only in Asia Pacific, but likewise for the international audience that's going to be joining us. Now, True Diagnostics is a leader in the longevity diagnostics field. I'm sure you know them very deeply, both in the consumer and the clinical field. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Hannah Wendt, who's the co-founder and director of clinical testing at True Diagnostics, and also a key speaker at our events. Hi, Hannah, how are you?
I'm doing well, Phil. How are you?
Yeah, great. Events coming up pretty fast. So, we're under a month away now. So delighted that you're going to be joining us. And of course, you guys have been doing a lot of very interesting work recently. And obviously, not too long ago, you announced Symphony Age, which is a very interesting product. And obviously, I'd be very keen to understand how that differs from what you've done in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll talk about this during my presentation at the conference as well. But Symphony Age is super unique because it talks about the heterogeneity of our organ systems, right? As humans, we all don't get liver disease or heart disease or dementia, Alzheimer's at the same age. So we know our organs tick at a different rate. So we're able to actually look at 11 of them together. And this work was something that we worked on with Dr. Albert Higgins-Chen and Raghav Sehgal, who now lead what was once Dr. Morgan Levine's lab at Yale. So it's really groundbreaking work because it just gets us closer and closer to that precision-based medicine. So actually being able to say, okay, our brain is aging a little bit faster, but our liver, lung, musculoskeletal, metabolic, all of that looks okay. How can we actually look at these biomarkers which make up the brain age, attack them directly, and start to lower the brain age, make it younger to reduce risk of really more mortality, but morbidities associated with that specific organ function too.
That's great. And I guess, none of us want to get cognitive decline, right? So if you do get those early markers, I guess there are interventions that you can take. Now, presumably when you bridge as a business between being like a diagnostic, you're not a clinical services provider. So I guess there's a line where you take your reports to, and then potentially you hand over to the clinical team to take it forward from there.
Yeah, definitely. And we always recommend, hey, if you're doing this testing, whether you're doing our True Age testing or a True Health testing, you're doing it through a healthcare provider as well. They're going to be the ones that are equipped to actually give you that direct care. We do make recommendations directly on the report, so you can use it as a consumer as well. But if you really want to integrate and follow that health plan, we find it best to match our testing with a healthcare provider in this longevity space or, functional medicine space. So it's really nice to be able to get into the system, get a baseline with the testing. You can get all of those age-related biomarkers, start to implement a treatment plan, and then retest every 3 months if you wanted to. But I would say at least every 6 months as a minimum to get, started.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, I've had personal experience myself, and so has my wife. Of your product. Now, you were working, you mentioned earlier, with Yale University, and your study compared 51 interventions on slowing aging. So, interested to know what you found out. What slows it down?
Oh, yeah, this is a really, really interesting study. So this study, like you mentioned, we're looking at DNA methylation aging biomarkers. So all of them that are out there on the market and how they respond, because there are a ton of them. We need to know how each of them works because they're capturing something different. So we looked at 51 longevity interventional studies in humans. And what we actually saw are some classes of interventions, such as the TNF alpha inhibitors, have really strong, consistent effects across multiple studies. While interestingly enough, senolytics, for example, have not really been as consistent. So they're a little bit inconsistent when you look at them across all of the clocks. So we're really looking at how the clocks function as a response, not necessarily what intervention looks to be the best. But we do see, things like metformin working really well from more of a drug class category. But I would say, as I know people don't want to hear this because it's rather intuitive and maybe more boring, but really those lifestyle factors, Phil, are what it comes down to. Having more of that Mediterranean-based diet, reducing stress, physical exercise, all make a massive, massive difference, even more so than supplements sometimes we see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a lot of activity in this whole biomarker space. You've got the Aging Biomarkers Consortium. As you know, there are other players in the field. Now, you guys have been at it for a long time. What would you say makes True Diagnostics' approach different to what else is in the marketplace at the moment?
Yeah, this is actually exactly what I'm going to be talking about at the Founders Forum, and I'm really excited to debut some of our newer research. True Diagnostic is very different because we're only looking at epigenetics as a biomarker. And we do believe epigenetics is the future of medical diagnostics because it really gives us the ability to create simple, affordable at-home tests with just a few drops of blood that can really accurately diagnose multiple, this is a big statement here, but multiple chronic diseases affecting 3 billion people worldwide, potentially saving tens of thousands of dollars from that user. And we're actually able to now report on about 1,600 of those epigenetic biomarkers that perform better than their traditional versions. Again, normally costing tens of thousands of dollars. So this one biomarker we're using in particular, epigenetics, has just been seen to really blow all the other biomarkers out of the water.
And I guess that there's a lot of technology sitting behind that, right? So AI is everywhere. So I guess that you guys, are you involved in building out AI systems, and how do you see AI backing into what's happening in the wider research and diagnostics field in longevity?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not a machine learning or AI expert myself. Our bioinformatics team, they definitely are. So they're incorporating machine learning and artificial intelligence into the models, into the epigenetic clock models. But where we see this in more of a preventative medicine approach and how we can help both patients and clinicians alike is actually through a development of an app that we're creating at the moment too.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, using some language modeling to actually be able to take all of those biomarkers in one place and start to be able to give you recommendations based on those biomarkers. And that's integrating everything. So it doesn't just have to be epigenetics, although that's where it's probably going to be started, but you can feed it your genetic data, you can feed it your wearable data, and it's going to be able to reply and really know you better than maybe even your clinician one day.
Wow, that's very interesting. So that's a new app that you guys are going to be bringing out. Will we see that in 2025?
We will. That's the hope. Yeah, I would say hopefully around Q2 even. We're trying to get out a beta version as quickly as possible.
Oh, great. So you're doing all that App Store stuff and trying to work out how to use beta tester access and all those painful things to get an app to market, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I would say the engineering team, that's completely on them. They're doing their best, and we're excited to for what's to come there. But I think it's going to make again this healthcare really accessible. This more front facing longevity based healthcare more accessible and really in your back pocket.
Yeah, and that's very exciting because I mean, you guys have got a jumping in point that's so much more ahead of where other people are coming out with new apps and so on. So very excited to have a look at that when it comes out. So let's talk about how you're experiencing your work in the work that you're doing with research and with clinicians, and what you're seeing are some of the most promising areas of science. Which you mentioned, Senolytics maybe not moving the needle as much as you had expected. What else are you seeing out there in the way that you're correlating your data with what other people are doing in the lab or in humans?
Yeah, I know one of the really hot topics right now is, of course, the therapeutic plasma exchange, right? And this is basically where you're taking out your plasma and you're kind of filtering it. You're taking all of the bad pieces of it out. It's almost like equivalent to going and giving blood. I personally give blood every 8 weeks. It kind of, removes all of my red blood cells, and I'm rejuvenating myself in a way that is not going to be what's the word I'm looking for here? It's using the own properties in my body is what I'm trying to say. So same thing with therapeutic plasma exchange, is you're filtering that plasma outside of your body and you're putting it back in. And we've actually seen a really great reduction in the biological age clock. So on average, I believe there's about a 2.7 year reduction in the biological age clocks on all fronts. That was published a while ago, I think maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So I think we'll start to see more of those procedural based therapies be at the head of this longevity field, especially things like hyperbaric oxygen chamber therapy. So we've done a study looking at that and the epigenetic clocks, and again, see positive outcomes with the epigenetic clocks, meaning, decreases with the biological aging. So I think we'll start to see larger investments in those procedural based therapies in the field, aside from, just the traditional lifestyle supplements and even medications that people are doing.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I guess that you're talking, the crossover between clinic and biohacking, right? So some people have their own hyperbaric chambers. So I guess that looking at the TPE, you see an immediate reduction in biological age, and I guess that you could see that once that benefit of that therapy starts to tail off, that you maybe see an increase again. So it'd be interesting to understand: is there a permanence to these therapies, right? Which I guess, do you have that data yet, or is that something that you still would be working on?
Yeah, still working on it. It's a great question. I think that's why it's so hard to study this as well, right? We get the question a lot, well, what about stem cells or exosomes? How does that affect my biological age? And I think it's really hard because, of course, you want to take a baseline before you start the therapy. But then the question becomes, okay, when are you getting the max benefit, right, from that therapy? Should
Yeah.
you be testing at the 3 month mark, the 4 month mark, maybe a little bit sooner, maybe a little bit later? And then at what point are you starting to see that benefit decline when you may need to re-engage in that therapy again? So I think the dosing, there are still a lot of questions around the dosing and what actually looks to be the best, but something we definitely want to dig into for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. And I guess there's a lot of people queuing up to find out what the answer to that question is going to be, right? So
Mhm.
it's commercially viable as well as from a therapeutic perspective, understanding whether you're choosing the right things for yourself as an N-1 study. But obviously,
Right.
you're coming to join us in Singapore, which is great. Only a few weeks away. What are the sort of messages that you would convey to the audience when you come in? What are the sort of things that you're going to be talking about with us?
Yeah, I'm really going to be talking about just epigenetic biomarkers in general. So, of course, we have the age testing. We just released a new product called True Health, which is looking at about 110 different antioxidants, vitamins, nutrition markers, other health systems and condition markers. But then we're going to talk about how epigenetics is able to actually report out on chronic disease state too. So, I'm going to really take it back and even define just what a biomarker is. And that's going to be the basis of my talk and how epigenetics we think looks to be the best biomarker, because it really comes down to three things, Phil. Number one, the predictive power of that biomarker, right? How much does it increase or decrease the odds of having or developing a disease?
Yep.
Number two, the reliability and precision of that biomarker. Can we actually trust what it's telling us? And then number three, the ease of collection. Basically everything logistics wise, right? The cost, the complications, how easy is it to perform? And when you line up all of these markers interpreted from epigenetics, we do think they actually prove out to be better compared to their traditional counterparts. So that's really what I'm going to drive home.
Well, that's great. And of course, you're going to be joining us in both of our tracks, right? So you're going to be joining the
Mhm.
clinical track as well as the investment track. So really looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time, Hannah. And we'll see you in Singapore. It's going to be great.
So excited, Phil. I'll see you soon.